I think most managers get productivity of their developers or engineers completely wrong, or maybe because of lack of expertise and experience they set the wrong expectations for the engineering team. And in fact, project management is a very difficult role and very difficult position, and people have certain expectations from the developers and from engineers, and not all the time those expectations are met. And most of the time managers are not the people who will take the blame, but developers will take the blame for some either mistakes or problems that occurred. So how to understand developers performance, how to understand developers delivery capacity, and in fact what does it mean senior developer, junior developer, or middle developer, because I still don't understand how to distinguish between those, because there is a couple of traits that are circulating between different roles, and the higher person from the experience and technical perspective, the difficulty to understand what is the exact label to get to them. I mean, when we talk about entry jobs, it's completely clear that the entry jobs is for people who didn't do the work before. They have a theoretical knowledge and they have a very big attitude and a very big desire to learn and work. These people we consider juniors. Juniors are the people who are employed and they do the work, and this is a billable position. Juniors do not work for food or for experience, or they should not be just grateful because they were hired. No, this is a role in the company, this is a position in the company, and every company probably need that position, and this is fine. We all need a junior's position because we want to grow the competent engineer in our environment, and we want to give them skill set that we want to have in our company. We want to teach them the way we want them to work, because sometimes we get a senior developer and they were educated for their whole career somewhere else, and yes, they know the programming language, yes, they know the design systems and patterns and everything, and still they are not the fit in the team because they do something on their own which is not welcomed in the company, and this is fine and absolutely okay. So we should not expect that every staff engineer or every senior engineer can work in each environment. This is why I have different steps of interviews, and this is why I start to misinterpret or maybe misunderstand the differences at a higher experience of developers or engineers. How to exactly define where is the end of let's say label of middle engineer and where is the beginning of the label of senior engineer, how to distinguish between this spectrum exactly, specifically. And this is probably a rhetorical question, because I don't expect to have an answer for that, and probably no one needs an answer for that. It's fine with the things how they are right now, because historically it is okay that middle developers, they earn more than some senior developers. That's also fine, and the salary is not always attached to a certain label. Maybe in big enterprises and in fun companies it is attached to the label. I don't know, maybe. Well, obviously it is attached to the label. The higher the label, the bigger the salary, but it doesn't mean that the person with the lower label is less competent or less efficient or less productive. I truly believe that. If we go back to labeling everyone and we say, okay, that's clear, we have a junior developer, and again, it's completely fine. How we understand that junior became middle in terms of one company? For example, we have a person who have been working for a year in the company. How we identify whether they are junior or they became a middle developer? I think those labels are subjectively things inside the company, and I think we should conclude that senior in one company can be a middle in another company. It obviously cannot be a junior, right? If someone considers a senior engineer and they go to somewhere else, they cannot be considered junior. That's absolute nonsense. That they may be considered middle according to the skill set that they have, comparing to the people that are working at a certain company. And I think that would be fair. That's why all these labels, they're probably meaningless, because at the end of the day, during the interview phases, it's very difficult to identify whether the person has a certain knowledge level and whether they can perform well. because the fact that the person has a certain knowledge level doesn't mean that they will perform well, because people who know less sometimes perform better than people who know more. And that's the thing. And when we do the interviews with people, we try to evaluate their experience and knowledge, but it's very difficult to evaluate attitude, daily attitude to the work, daily mood to the work. And the smaller the company, the bigger mistakes we do. So we want to understand the performance of a certain engineer or a certain developer, and the only thing that comes to our mind is to compare this work across the same domain with other people. So we try to discount everything else about the person. We want to only understand how fast they can center the div, for example, or write the API. It seems that speed will be the most important criteria for that evaluation, because we want to make our work fast, or let's say we want to make our job to be done faster in the company. And this is how we evaluate the developer. But in the result, or in fact, it's better to say in fact. So in fact, this is not completely true, because speed of delivery of a certain thing is not necessarily the right result that we are searching for. Because people can do things quickly, but they can do quickly things that no one needs. And the reality nowadays is that we do have a manager in the team, and we do have a team itself, and the requirements to deliver the software are downgrading every year. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, the level, well, it's obvious, the entry level to the, it's not that I think this is the fact. In next to 5 years or the next year, the entry level in development position will be reduced. I mean, yes, every day we introduce more languages, more libraries, and we consider that the complexity of entry grows because the amount of technologies that person has to know to perform their job is increasing. However, today with AI, potentially, most probably, we can neglect the fact that some people don't know multiple different libraries that can solve a certain problem. And they, knowing the whole concept of implementation, can now utilize any library to perform their task. So maybe AI will just equalize everyone in terms of library knowledge, and will bring us to the point where we have to understand general conceptions about development and programming, so we can apply them, diminishing the fact that every single day another 10, 100 new libraries appear in GitHub. So if we consider that speed of delivery is very important, and we aim all our resources to increase the speed of delivery by introducing AI and autocomplete and the tools that would increase the speed. The problem that is still in place is the understanding of work that should be done and attitude towards understanding the work that should be done. And in my personal experience, the attitude to work and the appeal to understand the work is the most important thing. It's not how many frameworks or technologies person know, because if we take a middle developer, they probably nowadays can perform almost any task, and they can perform it in a way maybe less efficient, maybe even more efficient than more experienced colleagues, but they can make the job done. So if we say that middle engineer can implement, well, we have to define who is that, but again, can implement anything, whatever is required, then the only thing that they might potentially miss is the understanding of what should be done. And managers have to help with that. Managers have to provide acceptance criteria, and they have to provide best case scenario. They have to provide motivation, why we want this to be implemented. And they want to describe what should be implemented. And then they would need to write what are the acceptance criteria of what's going to be implemented. And I said project managers, but in fact that should be a product managers or business owners. So the people who are responsible for the business part of the things. And if there is a poor communication between the business layer and developers, the problems that we still have nowadays won't go anyway. They won't go anyway. We still would have the misunderstanding. And when people say something, we can understand it in other way. Well, actually, the problem of interpretation doesn't go anyway. So if there is 5 people on the call, and there is one project manager or product manager, and he's trying to describe what's have to be implemented, there's a high chance that only one person on this call understands what should be done, and the other 4 is not fully understanding what should be done. Maybe one of these people is DevOps, another person is UX UI designer, and two other backend and frontend. And if the task relates to the user interface, half of the team won't listen. That's because they are tired, because it's a refinement process and they are already 2 hours in this discussion or 1.5 hours in this discussion. And then, yes, we understand that speed of delivery is very important, but the most important thing I consider is having the right attitude towards asking questions and figuring out what should be done. So when managers want to evaluate the work of developer, they have to make sure that they have done everything to make the other side understand what should be done. And project managers' work really depends on their soft skills and communication. And if we understand that developers are the people who are mostly hard skills, and they lack sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they do lack soft skills, because this is not they used to use on daily basis, because from 8 hours of work, 7 hours they don't spend talking. But most of the time managers do the otherwise. They collect the requirements, they do all the heavy lifting, trying to figure out what should be done. So project managers should always understand and discount the fact that their developers are not communicative, and they have to force them to understand what is really happening. So project managers can correctly evaluate the work of developers when they are doing absolute maximum of what they can do in order to make this project successful, and developers on the other side listening and completely can comprehend what's happening, and then the team can deliver the results in the defined timeline with the promised scope, with the amount of people that was declared on the project.